6% of housing in Blacktown is high density compared with 48% already in places like Wallara, just for an example. So if you're looking at, long-term vision and people getting into the housing market, isn't it better to build those homes on a little bit of land, a little bit further out from Sydney and commit to improving the infrastructure? Isn't that the better balance?
Well, a couple of things here is, firstly, it is out of balance. You're not seeing a fair distribution of population growth throughout the Sydney metropolitan area.
Yeah, but isn't
We're
that
not
obvious?
suggesting
because
the eastern
there's
suburbs.
no land left in some of these
I don't
areas.
think it is. I don't think it is. If you look at the growth of Barcelona, Paris, London, New York, infill development and urban consolidation, and that does mean more density along transport lines, is part of their vision for a growing city. It's really important to note, in Sydney today, that is not part of the vision as far as the Liberals are concerned. And the key reason for that, Laura, is because the TL challenge from independents for Liberal MPs has seen them say, we don't want development in our communities, we're going to push it all out into the western suburbs.
Right.
So when I go to Gregory Hills and there's 5,000 people... But isn't it fair? Don't you think that the distribution of population should be based on access to infrastructure? I mean, Gregory Hills, for example, 5,000 people move in, 6,000 people move into Gledswoods Hills. Most of them are young families. There's no public high school. I mean, how is that a reasonable distribution of population for Sydney when you want to have a growing Sydney and you want people to come in?
The eastern suburbs. I mean, it's the same problems here. But when you're talking about the cost of land, the fact is that the taxpayer is going to be paying a lot more for a lot less land in the eastern suburbs than it is, further out of Sydney. That's just a reality of it.
Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. The Committee for Sydney estimates that it's $100,000 less to have urban consolidation because you don't have to stretch social infrastructure over a greater plane of land. So, for example, Laura, if we keep sprawling Sydney the way the Liberal Party currently augmenting population growth for Sydney, you'll have to build a Westmead 2.0, a Westmead 3.0, a Westmead 4.0, because the western fringe of Sydney will keep expanding. Now, that's not the way Sydney should grow. In all fairness, that's not the way Brisbane or Melbourne or Auckland are growing. But because of the peculiarities of the politics affecting the Liberal Party, that's what we have to live with here. Now, I'm not saying that the eastern suburbs or the lower North Shore or the inner west should take more than their fair share, but there's got to be a fair distribution here.
OK, so is it fair to say the Liberals want to go out and you want to go up?
Urban consolidation and a fair deal for all of Sydney is exactly what we need, and particularly when you consider all of that transport infrastructure has been built closer to the city. If we want to have teachers and nurses and firefighters and police officers close to where jobs and infrastructure are, then you have to make sure that you've got urban infill, and that means units closer to the eastern seaboard.
Right, so that is the thing. It changes life as we know it for many families as well. My parents' generation grew up in homes or semis. You're saying that if you want to live close to the city, get used to apartment and high-rise living.
Well, that's the case for many people today. I mean, in my own electorate of Cogra, we have street meetings more often than not. People, particularly young people, live in units and apartments and are happy to do so. That we need to make sure that we're building the communities that work for them so that there is open space, that you do use land use appropriately, that you are focusing on green spaces and recreational areas. But I don't know. I mean, you go around the world, when people come back to Sydney, they always seem to say, how come planning works so much better in New York and London and Paris, and how can we keep getting it wrong right here in Sydney? And I think the answer is because we don't have a fair distribution.
Councils are an issue?
Look, there's many issues with the planning system, but it all starts at the top, and this is an agenda from the Liberal Party. And look, there's an election season on. People need to know what the different parties' agendas are.
I don't know about that. Some councils are run by the Greens. But anyway, I digress. I quickly want to ask you about health data that's dropped today before we run out of time. It shows that wait times, 1 in 10 critically ill patients had to wait 10 minutes for an ambulance in New South Wales. That seems pretty good, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, those numbers are at record highs, and in many cases you're looking at people who have to wait a significant amount of time who are in the worst case scenario or the most dire straits. Now, obviously, if the average wait time is increasing, it means that on the extremes, people are waiting for significant periods of time to get urgent access to medical treatment. this is not just a matter of increasing the number of paramedics, although that is part of our plan. It's also making sure we don't have bed block at emergency departments. Now, we recognise there's a real issue here. We need to make sure that we're investing in that interface between where the ambulances pull up and where they're treated and triaged at the emergency department. But the mix is wrong at the moment, and we're seeing some of the worst data we've ever seen when it comes to health information.
OK. Chris Minns, long chat today. Good to talk to you. We'll do it again soon.